Hey, what's up guys? Today I'll show you a horror fantasy film, HELLRAISER Part 1. Spoiler ahead, watch out and take care. The movie begins in a sultry cafe in Morocco, where two men are tucked away on a small table in the back. With an accented voice, one of the men, a seller, asks the other what his heart's desire is. The other man, named Frank, explains that he wants the small, ornate puzzle box the seller brought. To express his intention, he pushes a wad of money towards the man. Satisfied with the payment, the seller indicates that the transaction is done, and the box now belongs to Frank. Without another word, Frank stands up and takes the box with him. When Frank is out of earshot, the seller whispers that the box has always been Frank's. One night, while he's alone in his house, a bare-chested Frank sits on his attic floor with lit candles surrounding him. He opens the puzzle box and enters a combination. Suddenly, hooks emerge and sink into his skin. Frank howls in great pain. Morning comes, and Frank's attic is now a gruesome torture chamber. There are hooks hanging from the ceiling, and his dismembered body parts are nailed on a wooden post. A man in a dark robe steps inside and assembles what's left of Frank's face. It becomes clear that the large hooks had brutally torn his body apart. He picks up the box, and in a blink of an eye, the attic is back to normal, with no traces of Frank anywhere. Sometime later, a married couple arrives at the house. The man is Frank's more straight-laced brother, Larry, with his second wife, Julia. The house belonged to their family, but is regularly used by Frank. Since Larry and Julia moved back into the area for a fresh start, Larry thinks that they can live in a house. Larry is hopeful that this is what they need, but Julia seems unconvinced. The house is filled with unconventional knickknacks that reflect Frank's lurid tastes. In the kitchen, Larry finds rotten food infested with maggots. Meanwhile, Julia enters a dirty bedroom with an old mattress on the floor. She assumes that someone's been squatting there, but Larry finds another licentious figurine near the mattress and surmises that Frank was there recently before leaving, as he often does. The telephone rings and Larry answers it. It's his daughter, Kirsty, calling to say that she has found a place to rent in the city. Larry is surprised since he thought that Kirsty would stay with them in the house. However, Kirsty wants to be independent and strike out on her own. While Larry is on the phone, Julia continues to rummage through Frank's things in the bedroom. She finds a stack of photographs depicting Frank in a number of compromising positions with various women. Julia finds one picture and stashes it in her pocket. A few days later, the couple officially move into the house with all their things. Kirsty arrives soon after and warmly greets her father. She goes to the kitchen to prepare some coffee. Meanwhile, Julia reminisces while staring at a picture of Frank. When they first met, it was a few weeks before her wedding to Larry. Frank had knocked at the door, all soaked from the rain, and Julia was surprised by how attractive his hormone was. She succumbed to his charms, and they had a passionate massage. Of course, she still went ahead with the wedding of his brother, but she never got Frank out of her mind. Julia's reverie in the attic is interrupted by Larry entering. He cuts his hand while carrying the bed, and the blood from his wound drips to the floor. Unbeknownst to them, the blood is mysteriously absorbed by the floorboards. The wound is quite deep, and Julia takes Larry to the hospital. Afterward, the floorboards start to shake, and Frank's skinless corpse emerges. It turns out he was resurrected by Larry's blood. That night, Larry and Julia host a dinner party in their new home with some family friends. The party is merry, but Julia is not enjoying it. She excuses herself and goes upstairs. She finds herself drawn to the attic once more. Inside the room, she discovers Frank's reanimated corpse and gasps in horror. He tells her who he is and asks for her help. He needs more blood so he can be fully resurrected as a human again. A dinner party guest wants to be Kirsty's boyfriend and escorts Kirsty back to her apartment in the city. Along the way, they pass by a greasy-bearded man, nicknamed Greasy Beard, who's staring at her creepily. They walk away, and Kirsty gives him a smelly kiss to confirm his boyfriendship. Meanwhile, Julia couldn't sleep that night. She keeps thinking about the passionate night she had with Frank and how he made her feel so alive. Her lingering feelings for him convince her to help him regain his body again. In her apartment, Kirsty has a strange dream about a blood-soaked man. She wakes up drenched in sweat and calls her father to make sure that he's okay. The next day, Julia sets out on her mission to get more blood. She goes to a bar and picks up a man. She takes him back home and lets him assume that they'll sleep together. Julia takes the first victim to the attic. While his back is turned, she hits him with a hammer. Blood spurts as she knocks him to the floor and kills him. With her job done, she closes the door and lets Frank do the rest. She cleans up in the bathroom and returns to the attic. The first victim's body is now drained of blood and flesh. Frank, on the other hand, has regained some of his muscles due to absorbing the first victim's blood. However, Larry comes home early, and Julia is forced to quickly hide the victim's body. She lies to her husband and says that she's feeling sick. A while later, she returns to the attic. Frank says that his nerves are working again, but since he still has no skin, he is in pain. He needs a couple more bodies before he can fully restore himself. He also reveals that Larry's blood allowed him to escape creatures called Cenobites, and it's only a matter of time before they go after him. Frank promises that if she helps him kill more men, they will run away together. Kirsty finds a job in a pet store. One day, Greasybeard, she encountered before, enters the store and starts eating the large ants on display. Kirsty kicks his greasy ass out of the store, and he disappears a few seconds later without a trace of his smelly beard. Julia quickly scores her second victim and takes him back to the house. Like before, she kills him, and Frank drains the body of its essence. He regains more layers of muscle and can now taste food. She decides that it's high time that Frank explains what really happened to him. He then shows her the puzzle box and begins his story. He had initially pursued the box because he heard that it would bring him to a whole new level of sadomasochism. When he solved the puzzle and opened the box, the otherworldly creatures called Cenobites subjected him to torture and pleasure until he died. Later that night, Julia and Larry are watching TV when he hears noises from the attic. He is about to go up and check it out when Julia distracts him with a kiss. They go to the bedroom and begin their hormone game. But a jealous Frank appears and skins a rat in front of Julia, while Larry's back is turned. She freaks out and stops the game with Larry, and Frank quickly disappears upstairs. Larry is now worried about Julia's strange behavior of late. While having dinner with his daughter, Larry shares his concerns with Kirsty and asks her to visit Julia and befriend her, since she must be having a hard time adjusting after they moved. Meanwhile, Frank is getting impatient with Julia. He wants her to kill Larry, so he can complete his resurrection. Julia refuses to kill her husband, and Frank gets jealous again. She assures him that she doesn't love Larry, and Frank demands that she bring home more men soon. True to her word, Kirsty visits the house one afternoon and sees Julia with another man, the would-be third victim. She follows him inside and witnesses Frank feeding on the man. Frank introduces himself as her uncle and corners her in the attic. Kirsty fights back and sticks her hand inside his ribcage to incapacitate him. She grabs the puzzle box and throws it out the window to distract Frank. Kirsty runs out of the house and escapes with the fallen puzzle box. The shock of what happened to her causes Kirsty to lose consciousness in the middle of the road. She wakes up in a hospital, and a doctor gives her back the box. Alone in her room, Kirsty solves the puzzle and summons a portal to a dark chamber with a long tunnel. She encounters a horrifying creature with sharp teeth in the tunnel, and it chases her back into her room. The portal closes behind her, and Kirsty tries to open the box again. This time, she summons the Cenobites. They are tall and pale humanoid creatures with dark eyes and wearing leather outfits. They also have various sharp contraptions poking out of their faces or other body parts. Their leader, Pinhead, explains that they are explorers who specialize in carnal plane and pleasure. Each person who solves the puzzle box summons them, and in return, they have to take that person with them back to their realm. They try to take Kirsty with them, and she bargains with them by sharing that her uncle Frank had escaped their clutches. She offers to help them get him back in exchange for leaving her alone. Pinhead accepts her offer, under the condition that Frank must confess that he escaped from them. If she fails, they will take her to their realm and torture her. Soon after, Larry arrives home, and Julia tells him that there's something that he needs to see. Kirsty escapes from the hospital and rushes to her father's house. She finds her bloody father in the bedroom and tells him everything that happened. Larry explains that he found Frank and killed him, but Kirsty doesn't accept the story until she sees Frank's dead body. She goes up to the attic and sees a skeleton lying on the floor, surrounded by lit candles. Right then, Pinhead and the Cenobites appear. He points at the skeleton and demands that Kirsty gives him the man responsible for the dead body. But based on Larry's story, it was her father who killed Frank. Kirsty screams that she will not let the Cenobites take her father, and she runs out of the attic. She goes to Larry and urges him to leave. But Larry begins behaving strangely, and Kirsty finally realizes that the dead body upstairs is actually her father, and Frank killed him and took his skin. Kirsty attempts to run, but is caught by Julia. Frank pulls out a knife and tries to stab Kirsty, but he mistakenly stabs Julia instead. He doesn't want to waste a body, so he absorbs Julia's essence as well and finally kills her. Kirsty runs upstairs, and Frank chases her back into the attic. She cries at the sight of the skeleton again, now knowing that her father is dead. Frank tells her that her father was dead inside, long before he killed him. However, this was the admission of guilt, which the Cenobites are waiting for, so they reveal themselves to Frank and Kirsty. The hanging hooks and the wooden post also appear inside the room. One by one, the hooks sink themselves into Frank's skin and tear his body apart, banishing his soul to be tortured in their realm for eternity. Kirsty runs out of the attic, but one of the Cenobites blocks her way. Despite the successful bargain, they still want to take Kirsty with them. Without any choice, Kirsty escapes to Julia's bedroom and grabs the box from her hands. Pinhead creeps up behind her and gleefully says that they enjoy torturing her. But Kirsty is determined to fight them until the very end. She reverses the combination in the puzzle box, and in that way, banishes several of the Cenobites back to their realm. A bright flash of light illuminates the house, and it begins to collapse. The boyfriend arrives looking for Kirsty, and they happily reunite, ready to restore their hormoneship. However, another Cenobite still remains, and Kirsty frantically reverses the combination again to send him away. The front door flies open, and the monster that Kirsty met in the hospital appears. She finally is able to reverse the puzzle back to its original form and banish the monster too. Still alive, Kirsty and her boyfriend walk out of the house as it burns to ashes. Kirsty throws the box into one of the smoldering piles, trying to prevent it from falling into the wrong hands again. But Greasybeard from the pet store appears and plucks the box from the fire. He then transforms into a winged creature and flies away with it. Somewhere in Morocco, the same seller, who met with Frank previously, is selling the box to a new customer. They are seated in the same cafe, with the puzzle box in front of them on the table. He asks the man what his heart's desire is, the same question he asked Frank. It now becomes clear that it's an endless cycle. The seller sells the box to sadomasochists like Frank, and when the Cenobites have claimed the person's soul, one of their creatures would take the box back to the seller and start the cycle all over again. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.